Padme Amidala represented the last functioning ethical compass in the Republic. Long before the Jedi were blinded by doctrine, and long before the Senate drowned in procedure, Padme remained the one political figure who saw institutions as tools rather than identities. Her role wasn't symbolic, it was structural. She was the stabilizing element that allowed democracy to pretend it still had a moral direction, even as corruption hollowed it out from the center. Her death marks the disappearance of a counterweight the Republic desperately needed. While senators traded favors and the Jedi marched to war, Padme constantly pushed for transparency, de-escalation, and negotiation. She stood against military expansion when others applauded it. She warned colleagues about Palpatine's growing influence when others celebrated it. Without her, the Senate chamber transformed from a political arena into a performance stage for tyranny. Padme was the only leader who recognized that democracy collapses not through violence, but through compliance. She understood that authoritarianism grows when people prefer comfort over responsibility. Her speeches, warnings, and investigations weren't passive objections. They were the last active resistance to a political tide the Republic refused to acknowledge. When she died, that resistance died with her. Her connection to Anakin symbolized her connection to the Republic itself. Anakin represented possibility, potential, and the promise of change, exactly what the Republic claimed to represent. When Anakin fell, it wasn't only Padme's heart that broke. It was the symbolic collapse of the Republic's future. Anakin's turn to Darth Vader was the physical manifestation of democracy turning into dictatorship. Padme didn't just lose a husband, she lost the proof that her belief in the Republic's goodness still meant something. Padme's death gave the Empire total ideological victory. Before her death, Palpatine's regime still faced moral scrutiny. She was the one person whose defiance carried enough weight to threaten the political legitimacy of his narrative. Her absence meant the Empire no longer had to pretend. It could rule without debate, without dissent, and without the burden of someone brave enough to name what it really was. Her final words weren't about love, they were about political truth. There is still good in him wasn't a romantic plea. It was the last denial of a galaxy falling into nihilism. She believed that goodness still mattered, that redemption was possible, that compassion could still disrupt power. That belief had anchored the Republic for years. When she died, the Senate lost the last person who believed the system was worth saving. Padme's influence extended beyond her speeches. She inspired senators who feared speaking out, journalists who feared exposing the truth, and citizens who feared resisting oppression. Her death extinguished the political courage she embodied. The Empire didn't just silence her, it silenced everyone who relied on her strength to justify their own. Her assassination wasn't a physical act, it was systemic. She died because the galaxy she tried to protect had already surrendered to the darkness she warned about. Her collapse on Polis Massa wasn't the cause, it was the final symptom of a Republic that had lost its ability to fight. The Empire didn't kill Padme, the Republic's apathy did. Padme's story intersects with the Jedi's failure in a revealing way. The Jedi believed they were defending peace, but Padme was the one who understood what peace required. Accountability. The Jedi defended institutions, Padme defended principles. Without her, the Jedi's final stance against tyranny had no political ally. Her absence ensured their destruction would go unchallenged. Her legacy shows why the Republic fell so quickly. Once Padme was gone, no senator attempted meaningful resistance. Politicians who once disagreed with Palpatine fell silent. Those who opposed military expansion accepted authoritarian control. Those who claimed to value democracy accepted dictatorship with gratitude. Padme's death exposed how fragile conviction really was in the Senate. The Republic didn't collapse overnight, it eroded slowly as people like Padme became outnumbered. Her death symbolized the final victory of indifference over integrity. The Empire rose not because it was powerful, but because Padme's moral resistance was no longer there to oppose it. She was the final barrier between a flawed democracy and open tyranny. Her tragedy is not that she died, it's that the galaxy realized her value too late. Everything she predicted came true. Every danger she warned about arrived. Her loss reveals the truth at the heart of the Republic's fall. The system wasn't destroyed by evil, it was destroyed by the absence of someone brave enough to resist it. Padme's death confirmed that the Republic no longer deserved to survive. Padme's belief in democracy was more than political optimism. It was the operating principle that allowed the Republic to pretend it still functioned. Her entire worldview depended on the assumption that systems could be repaired through patience and persuasion. When she died, that assumption collapsed. Her absence demonstrated that belief alone could not sustain a government whose institutions were already hollow. Without her, the Senate no longer had a moral foundation to lean on, and the Republic shifted overnight from debate to obedience. Padme's relationship with Anakin mirrored her relationship with the Republic, built on idealism, maintained through denial, and ultimately broken by the weight of reality. She believed she could pull Anakin back from the darkness the same way she believed she could steer the Senate back from corruption. His betrayal shattered both illusions at once. Her death represents the moment she finally confronted the truth she had resisted for years, that neither Anakin nor the Republic were capable of becoming what she believed they could be. Her loyalty to institutions became her greatest vulnerability. Padme trusted procedural legitimacy, even when the Senate weaponized it against her. Emergency powers, military expansions, and constitutional rewrites were all passed under the guise of legality. She understood the danger, but continued believing the system would correct itself. When she died, the last advocate for institutional accountability vanished, leaving only those who clung to procedure without understanding its purpose. Her warnings fell on ears that wanted silence. Senators valued comfort, safety, and the illusion of stability more than the difficult work of defending democracy. As long as Padme lived, they were forced to confront their own complicity, because she verbalized the truths they preferred to ignore. Her death relieved them of that pressure. With her gone, they no longer had to justify their passivity. They could surrender to Palpatine's authority without contradiction. Padme's absence also eliminated the political balance that kept the Jedi connected to the Senate. She served as an intermediary who understood both the spiritual complexity of the Jedi and the political machinery of the Republic. Without her diplomatic bridge, the Jedi lost their strongest advocate within the government. Order 66 wasn't just a result of Palpatine's manipulation. It was made possible because Padme wasn't there to mediate, defend, or challenge the narrative that painted the Jedi as traitors. Her death transformed the Senate into something unrecognizable. What had once been a deliberative body devolved into a ceremonial institution, rubber-stamping, authoritarian rule. Senators who once admired her conviction became complicit through silence. Her absence revealed how fragile the Republic's backbone had been. Without Padme's advocacy, the Senate had no one left willing to challenge policy, ask questions, or resist fear-based legislation. Padme's tragedy is that she saw the Republic's death coming long before it arrived, but she continued fighting as if it could still be saved. Her speeches about manipulation, overreach, and corruption weren't predictions. They were diagnoses. When she died, the galaxy lost the only political figure who recognized the disease and refused to accept it as normal. Her death confirmed that the Republic no longer wanted to be saved. Her influence lived on only through those who understood her warnings. Bail Organa and Mon Mothma didn't form the rebellion because they hated the Empire. They formed it because Padme's death proved the Senate would never recover. Her absence became the catalyst for their transition from reformers to insurgents. She didn't just inspire rebellion, she justified it. Without Padme, peaceful resistance became impossible, making organized defiance the only remaining path. Padme's death reshaped the philosophical landscape of Star Wars. Before she died, hope was institutional, tied to governments, councils, and political structures. After she died, hope became individual, tied to personal conviction rather than systemic stability. Her children grew up in a galaxy where government could no longer be trusted. They inherited Padme's ideals, but not her faith in institutions, which allowed them to rebuild hope from the ground up instead of from within a broken system. Her death also reframed Anakin's transformation into Vader. The galaxy often views Vader as the executioner of the Jedi, but Padme's death reveals him as the executioner of democracy itself. She represented the last political restraint on Palpatine's agenda. With her gone, Anakin became the enforcer of an ideology she spent her life resisting. Her death doesn't just mark the fall of a wife. It marks the fall of a worldview that hoped compassion could overcome corruption. Padme's absence highlighted the cost of losing leaders who prioritized conscience over power. The Republic didn't fall because the Empire was stronger. It fell because the Republic stopped fighting for itself. Padme remained one of the only senators willing to confront the uncomfortable truth that democracy requires active, sustained commitment. When she died, the last person willing to shoulder that responsibility disappeared. The Republic didn't lose a politician. It lost its will to live. Her story exposes the myth that democracies collapse suddenly. In reality, they fracture slowly as people choose convenience over principle. Padme kept those fractures from becoming catastrophic by insisting on transparency, accountability, and restraint. Once she was gone, those fractures widened until the Senate no longer served a public, only an emperor. Her death allowed the slow erosion to become a rapid implosion. Padme's legacy survives only because her children rise to fulfill the ideals she carried. Leia becomes the political embodiment of Padme's courage and clarity. Luke becomes the philosophical embodiment of her compassion and belief in redemption. The rebellion doesn't just inherit her goals. It inherits her understanding that systems cannot save people unless people save the system first. Her death marks the end of the Republic, but her ideals form the beginning of the movement that will eventually topple the Empire. Padme's death isn't just the end of a character arc. It is the narrative pivot that shifts Star Wars from institutional failure to individual responsibility. She was the Republic's conscience, its moral structure, and its final defense against authoritarian rule. When she died, the Republic died with her, but the rebellion she inspired ensured that her principles would outlive the system that failed her. Her death closed the chapter on a fallen Republic and opened the door to a new fight.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.